There is a crisis in the horse world, but it is not happening in the arena. It is not a controversial score. It is not a welfare violation caught on camera. And it is not something that people argue about in comment sections. It is far quieter than that. It happens in the early hours of the morning when a veterinarian is driving alone down a dark road after an emergency call. It happens in clinics long after everyone else has gone home. And sometimes it happens in silence because the people at the center of the crisis are the very people we trust the most: veterinarians, the ones who show up when everything goes wrong, the ones who carry the responsibility of life and death, the ones who stand beside you on your best days and your worst. And yet, despite everything they do for the animals we love, they are struggling. In fact, research has shown that veterinarians are 3 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide than the general population around the world. In the United States, the pattern is just as alarming. Male veterinarians are significantly more likely to die by suicide than other men, and female veterinarians are at even higher relative risk compared to the general female population. This is not a coincidence. This is not a series of isolated tragedies. This is a pattern. And for years, it has been hiding in plain sight. Until now. Because in 2026, something changed. The Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, the RCVS, introduced a requirement that could reshape the entire profession. For the first time, veterinary practices will be required to actively plan for suicide prevention, not just respond to it, not just talk about it, but prevent it. In February 2026, the RCVS made an announcement that marked a turning point. Starting on April 1st, 2026, all veterinary practices within its practice standard scheme would be required to implement practice-specific suicide prevention plans. This was not just a policy update, it was an acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that something within the profession is fundamentally wrong. Because when an entire profession has suicide rates multiple times higher than average, the issue is not individual weakness. It is structural. The RCVS made it clear that these plans would not be generic. Each practice would need to examine its own risks. Each workplace would need to ask difficult questions. Where are the vulnerabilities? Who is at risk? And what systems are missing? Because for far too long, the answer to mental health struggles in veterinary medicine has been the same: be resilient, work harder, push through. But resilience has limits. And when nearly half of veterinarians report burnout and more than 65% report experiencing depression during their careers, the problem is not a lack of strength. It is lack of support. From the outside, veterinary medicine looks like a dream: working with animals, helping people, making a difference. But that image hides a much more difficult reality. Because veterinarians do not just save lives, they also end them. Euthanasia is a routine part of veterinary work. And while it is often described as a compassionate act, it carries a heavy emotional cost. Studies have shown that over 80% of veterinarians report that euthanasia contributes significantly to their stress and burnout. But the emotional burden goes even deeper than that. Veterinarians are often forced to euthanize animals not because treatment is impossible, but because it is unaffordable. That creates a kind of psychological conflict that is difficult to explain. A sense that you are doing something necessary, but not entirely right. This is what psychologists call moral injury. And over time, it builds. It builds with every difficult conversation, every grieving client, every decision that has no perfect outcome. And unlike many other professions, veterinarians experience this repeatedly. sometimes multiple times a day. Then there are hours. Nearly 80% of veterinarians work more than 50 hours per week. Emergency calls disrupt sleep, schedules are unpredictable, and for equine veterinarians, the challenges are even greater. They often work alone, driving long distances, handling emergencies without immediate support. That isolation matters because isolation increases risk. There is another factor that makes veterinary medicine uniquely dangerous when it comes to suicide risk: access. Veterinarians have access to powerful medications, substances that are specifically designed to end life quickly and effectively. And research consistently shows that access to lethal means is one of the strongest predictors of suicide outcomes. Some studies suggest that access to euthanasia drugs can increase the likelihood of suicide by up to 4 times. This is not about intent alone. It is about opportunity. Moments of crisis are often temporary, they can pass. But when lethal means are immediately available, those moments can become irreversible. This is one of the key reasons the RCVS policy focuses on reducing access and increasing safeguards. Because even small barriers can make a difference. Even small delays can save lives. When you step back and look at the data, the scale of the problem becomes impossible to ignore. Surveys have found that up to 22% of veterinarians report experiencing suicidal thoughts within a single year. That is nearly 1 in 4. At the same time, around 49% report high levels of burnout, and a majority report symptoms of depression at some point in their careers. In the United Kingdom, 86% of veterinarians have reported emotional exhaustion. These are not small numbers. These are not outliers. These are indicators of a profession under sustained pressure. And yet, for many years, this issue remained largely hidden. Why? Because of culture, because of stigma, because of the belief that admitting struggle is a sign of weakness. The new RCVS requirements represent a shift in responsibility. It moves the focus from individuals to systems. Instead of asking veterinarians to simply cope better, it asks workplaces to become safer. Every practice must now develop a suicide prevention plan tailored to its specific risks. This includes identifying factors such as access to medications, lone working environments, and high-stress situations. It also includes creating clear pathways for support, making it easier for staff to speak up, making it easier to ask for help, and perhaps most importantly, it begins to challenge the culture of silence, because prevention does not happen in isolation. It happens in environments where people feel supported. Organizations like VetLife have already begun working to fill in the gaps. They provide confidential support to veterinary professionals, including those experiencing suicidal thoughts, and demand for these services has been increasing. At the same time, the RCVS has expanded its Mind Matters initiative, which focuses on mental health, research, training, and awareness within the profession. But even with these efforts, there's still a long way to go because the underlying issues, workload, financial pressure, emotional strain, are still there. And until those issues are addressed, the risk will remain. For those of us in the horse world, this issue is not abstract. It is personal. Equine veterinarians are often the ones we rely on in our most vulnerable moments. They are there when our horses are in pain. They are there when we are forced to make impossible decisions. They are there when everything goes wrong. But who is there for them? This policy is a step towards answering that question, because horse welfare depends on human welfare. And if the people caring for horses are struggling, the entire system is affected. This new requirement for the RCVS will not solve everything. It will not eliminate burnout. It will not prevent tragedy, but it is a beginning, a recognition that something needs to change, that the people who dedicate their lives to caring for animals also need care themselves. And maybe for the first time in a long time, the industry is finally starting to listen.